My name is Sarah Johnson. I was gazing at the golden-hued evening sky from the window of our home in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Boston. Even at 38, the green eyes reflecting in the mirror still retain the same sharpness from when I worked at a top-tier advertising agency. However, the light dwelling in those eyes has changed somewhat. It's now a complex glow, mixing love for my 8-year-old son Ethan and amazement at his peculiar ability. "Mom, I saw it again." Ethan's voice made me turn around. He was pointing out the window with a serious expression. I stood next to my son and followed his gaze. I couldn't see anything, but I never doubted Ethan's words. "What did you see, Ethan?" "Grandpa. He's smiling under the tree in the garden." I caught my breath. The grandpa Ethan referred to was my father, who passed away 3 years ago. Shortly after Ethan was born, we realized he had the ability to see things invisible to ordinary people. At first, I thought it was just a child's vivid imagination, but eventually, I had to acknowledge it was real. I became convinced Ethan's power was genuine when he was 4. One day, he suddenly said, "Grandma's coming." 10 minutes later, my mother showed up unannounced. Since then, Ethan's predictions have come true many times, becoming deeply rooted in our family's daily life. However, this special power can sometimes be a burden. Ethan occasionally says he sees deceased people, which can frighten him. I'm torn between wanting to protect my son and not wanting to suppress his ability. "It's all right, Ethan. Grandpa must be watching over us." As I gently embraced Ethan's shoulders, trying to reassure him, I heard the front door open, announcing my husband Michael's return. Michael. Just thinking his name brings a small pain to my chest. At 40, my husband is still an attractive and successful man. But lately, I've been feeling a subtle rift between us. "I'm home," Michael's voice echoed, but it lacked the warmth it once had. He had been using work as an excuse to avoid spending time with the family. He's been coming home late more often and going out frequently on weekends. "Welcome home, Michael," I replied, feigning calm, but anxiety was swirling inside me. Our relationship, once filled with love, has now become distant. When I try to talk about Ethan's ability, Michael becomes irritable and tries to change the subject. "Dad, welcome home." Ethan ran happily towards his father, but Michael's response was cold. He just lightly patted his son's head and immediately headed for his study. Watching his retreating back, I let out a deep sigh. This is our family's daily life now. Ethan's special ability, the rift with Michael, and my yearning for self-fulfillment as a full-time housewife. All these intertwine complexly, weighing heavily on my heart. However, I didn't yet know that an event that would greatly shake this peaceful daily life was about to occur. That day, I had been restless since morning. It was the day Michael was returning from a week-long business trip. Although our relationship had grown cold recently, I found myself looking forward to my husband's return. "Ethan, Dad's coming home. Let's go greet him together." Seeing my son's face brighten, I felt a bit guilty. Ethan respects and adores his father. But lately, Michael had been cold towards his son too. As we stepped out of the front door, Michael's car was just pulling into the garage. Ethan let out a small cheer and was about to dash off, but I gently held his shoulder. For some reason, anxiety was spreading in my chest. Michael got out of the car and walked towards us with a tired expression. His eyes lacked the warmth they once had. "Welcome home, Michael. I'm back." We exchanged curt greetings, and Michael moved to open the trunk. At that moment, Ethan suddenly cried out, "Dad, there's a lady in the trunk." I gasped. Michael's face turned pale at Ethan's words. His hands shook, and he dropped the keys. "What are you saying, Ethan?" Michael's voice was filled with anger I had never heard before. He walked towards Ethan and grabbed his arm tightly. "Don't joke around. Such nonsense. It hurts, Dad." Ethan's scream brought me back to my senses. "Michael, stop it." I quickly pulled Ethan away and held him close. Ethan was trembling, and the fear transmitted through his small body clenched my heart. "What are you doing? Scaring Ethan like that? What are you teaching him? Making a child tell such lies?" Michael's eyes were bloodshot, as if he were a different person. He roughly ran his fingers through his hair and strode towards the garage. "Michael, wait." Neither my voice nor Ethan's crying seemed to reach his ears. Michael entered the garage, opened the trunk, and began rummaging through it. "See? There's nothing here." He shouted triumphantly, but there was an unnatural excitement in his voice. I stood frozen, still holding Ethan. "Sarah, you need to teach this child to distinguish between reality and imagination." Such nonsense. Michael's words trailed off. His eyes fell on Ethan, trembling in my arms. For a moment, a look of regret seemed to cross his face. But it quickly returned to a hard expression. "I'm tired from work. Leave me alone for a while." With those words, Michael disappeared into the house. Ethan and I were left standing in the garage. "Mom, it's true. There was a lady." Ethan's small voice made my chest tighten. Because I believed in my son's mysterious power, this situation was terrifying. "I know, Ethan. I believe you." I gently stroked my son's head while staring at the house where Michael had disappeared. The unease that had been building up, and today's events. I can't ignore it anymore. I need to know the truth. That night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, I made a decision. Tomorrow, after Michael leaves for work, I'll check the car trunk. Whatever the truth may be, I have the courage to face it. To protect my family. The next morning, I woke up feeling uneasy. Michael had left for work early, and I had sent Ethan off to school. Left alone in the house, I sat at the kitchen table, recalling yesterday's events. "It's now," I told myself, slowly standing up. As I put my hand on the garage door, I hesitated for a moment, but remembering Ethan's sad face, I mustered my courage. Entering the garage, Michael's car stood quietly. I took a deep breath and approached the car. Taking the spare key in hand, I tried to unlock the trunk, noticing my hand was shaking. Calm down, Sarah, I told myself, slowly opening the trunk. At first, it seemed empty. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I thought I saw something move in the back. I gasped and cautiously reached out. Suddenly, something like fabric moved, and a woman's face appeared from underneath. "Help me." A weak voice was heard. I stepped back in surprise but quickly regained my composure. "Are you all right?" I called out as I helped the woman out. She was a young woman in her late 20s, with long blonde hair in disarray and a pale face. I supported her as I led her into the house and sat her on the living room sofa. "I'll get you some water," I said as I headed to the kitchen, but my mind was in turmoil. I couldn't tell if this was reality or if I was dreaming. When I returned with water, the woman seemed a bit calmer. "Thank you," she said, drinking the water in one gulp. "My name is Jessica," she began slowly. "I met your husband, Michael, 3 months ago." I gasped. "An affair?" It was one of the answers I had expected, but being confronted with the reality of it hurt my chest. However, Jessica's next words were far beyond my expectations. At first, it was a normal relationship. But then I realized, he was involved in illegal transactions. Illegal transactions? I couldn't believe my ears. Jessica nodded. "His company appears to be conducting legitimate business on the surface, but behind the scenes, they're dealing in illegal drugs. I found out about it and..." Her voice trembled. "He started threatening me. And yesterday, when he found out I was going to report to the police." I was at a loss for words. The fact that Michael was having an affair was shocking, but even more so was the fact that he was involved in illegal activities. But why in the trunk? I managed to squeeze out. "He was trying to silence me. But maybe he was afraid to kill me, so it seems he was planning to take me somewhere far away and abandon me." In my mind, Michael's abnormal reaction yesterday came back to me. Now I understood why he had been so upset and exploded in anger at Ethan's words. "We need to report this to the police," I said, taking out my smartphone. But at that moment, I heard the front door open. "Sarah, it's me. I forgot some documents and came back to get them." It was Michael's voice. Jessica and I looked at each other, frozen. Footsteps approached. I quickly hid Jessica in the closet and took a deep breath, trying to appear calm. "Sarah, where are you?" Michael's voice came from the hallway. "I'm here, in the living room," I answered, suppressing my trembling voice. The moment Michael entered the living room, I noticed his eyes quickly scanning the room, as if searching for something, or someone. "What's wrong?" I asked, trying to sound as natural as possible. No," he answered nervously. "I'm looking for some documents." "Haven't you seen them?" "I'm sorry, I didn't notice." Michael walked around the room, starting to search here and there. His movements didn't seem like just looking for documents. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and he occasionally glanced at me. Suddenly, there was a small sound from the closet. I saw Michael's body tense for a moment. "Didn't you hear something?" His voice was tinged with tension. "Isn't it just your imagination?" I feigned calmness, but my heart was pounding fiercely. Michael slowly began to approach the closet. I held my breath, desperately thinking about what to do. If he found Jessica like this. That's when it happened. The doorbell rang. At the sound of the doorbell, Michael and I froze simultaneously. After a moment of silence, Michael turned to me and said in a low voice, "No one should be coming." His eyes clearly showed suspicion. I took a deep breath and, trying to appear as calm as possible, said, "I'll get it," and headed for the front door. When I opened it, Ethan was standing there. His homeroom teacher was standing next to him, looking concerned. "Ethan, what's wrong?" I asked, my voice a mix of surprise and relief. The teacher explained, "Ethan suddenly felt unwell. He said he wanted to go home, so I brought him." At that moment, Ethan whispered in my ear, "Mom, Grandpa said we needed to come home." I caught my breath. Ethan's mysterious power had sensed something again. "Thank you very much." "I'm sorry for the trouble," I said to the teacher, and led Ethan into the house. When we returned to the living room, Michael was standing there, looking uneasy. His eyes fixed on Ethan, his expression a mix of complex emotions. "What's wrong, Ethan?" Michael's voice held more irritation than concern. That's when it happened. The closet door slowly opened, and Jessica appeared. With trembling hands, she pointed at us and said in a shaky voice, "I can't hide anymore." The air in the room froze in an instant. The color drained from Michael's face, and he tried to say something but couldn't form words. Suddenly, Ethan asked, "Dad, why are you lying?" "Grandpa said you were doing bad things." Michael sank to the floor, as if crushed by his son's words. I just... At that moment, we heard sirens. Someone had called the police. The next few minutes felt like a dream. Police officers entered the house, assessed the situation, and restrained Michael. Jessica began giving her testimony in tears, while I held Ethan close, staring blankly at everything unfolding before me. After the police interrogation was over and the house became quiet again, I finally began to accept reality. Michael's hidden face, his criminal activities, and his betrayal of our family. Now that everything had come to light, a quiet determination was growing within me. After putting Ethan to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, deep in thought. What should I do now? The answer was clear. The next morning, I called a lawyer to discuss divorce proceedings. Then, I explained the situation to my parents and decided to stay at their home for a while. As I packed our belongings, I looked out the window. A fresh breeze was blowing, as if announcing the start of a new season. "Mom, where are we going?" Ethan asked anxiously. I hugged my son and said gently, "We're going to a new home. Grandma and Grandpa's house. We're going to start a new life there." Ethan thought for a moment, then nodded slightly. "Okay, I understand. But what about Dad?" I took a deep breath and carefully chose my words. Dad, we won't be able to see him for a while. But Mom will be by your side, Ethan. Let's do our best together. Holding my son's small hand tightly, I renewed my determination. The road ahead won't be easy. But with Ethan's special ability in the bond between us, mother and son, we should be able to overcome any difficulty. Before leaving the house, I looked back one last time, and memories of our once happy days flashed through my mind like a kaleidoscope. But those are now in the past. It's time to find a new life, new happiness. Well then, shall we go? I said, and we took